So thank you so much, Kay, for being on the show today. Can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Of course, yes. Thank you for having me. So, just a little bit about me. My name is Kay. I am from Valdosta, Georgia. It's a small country town. And I grew up there pretty much all my life. My family, they are entrepreneurs. Well, they were entrepreneurs. They ended up like going to college and stuff, which kind of pushed us to go to college. It became a thing in our family that my whole generation, my siblings, my cousins, everybody wanted all of us to go to college. And so no one had gone to college before us. So the incentive was all of our parents went to college, which was really interesting to go to college with your parents. And so I grew up, I went to college, I was studying biology. I was going to be a doctor. And I even went to med school, which was an interesting experience. And through all that, I was just like, this doesn't really feel like something that I want to do. I didn't want to continue on that path. So I came home and I went and got my master's in bioinformatics, still science. And after doing that, I got married and I was just like, okay, now it's time to like be an adult, find a job. So we moved up here to Atlanta. So I'm currently in Atlanta and oh my goodness, it was so hard to find a job. I was like, are you kidding me? Like I'm a master's degree candidate. I have, the education. You need experience. You need, that practical, like internships and stuff, which I had those things, but, jobs now want like 20 years of experience. And I'm just like, really? I have a degree. So yeah, that was really stressful. And I just woke up one day and I was like, you know what? I understand my parents, idea that go to college, and then you get a good job, but that wasn't working out for me. Like it wasn't cutting it. I kept being told, either I was overqualified with my degree or underqualified because of my lack of experience. And so I was just like, I am not going to live like this. Like, I'm not going to live, being told that, oh, you have some of the things, but not all of the things. So like, sorry, you're not a good fit. Like, I don't have time for that. So I woke up and I went on, I think Amazon or maybe eBay. Oh, it probably was eBay actually. And I bought my first camera. And after that, it was a wrap. You couldn't tell me anything. From that moment on, I was just like, okay, I'm an entrepreneur now. And my parents were like, this is crazy. But I'm just like, I need the money. Like, I need to pay my bills. And so I just forged my own path from there.
So, wow. So your parents actually went to college with you?
Yes, both of them.
Oh my
My mom and dad. Yeah. So we all literally went to the same college together. It was crazy.
So what did they study for school then?
Education. So both of them are educators. And yeah, and I mean, it's so crazy because so after I left med school, I went back to get my master's in bioinformatics and then I started teaching. So I forgot to say that when I came up here, I was looking for teaching jobs. I was looking for jobs as like a high school teacher or a middle school teacher. And it's so crazy because a lot of the schools that I was applying to, they felt like because I taught on a college level, I couldn't necessarily relate or transition the material for a lower level, which was the craziest thing I've ever heard in my life. But and I had to go through all these different kind of interviews. Like I actually had to teach classes. Like they could see that I could translate the material, but some of them were like, oh, we just need someone that's like more relating to kids. And I'm just like, really? But like, this is a science charter school. Like I have more than enough, like, ability to teach them. But yeah, so my parents were educators and they still are. So that's where we went with that.
Right. So did they really start in the educational field after they got their degree? Because you also said that they were entrepreneurs too. So kind of tell me about what it was like growing up with your parents and what they were doing for work.
Yeah, so growing up, like we had stores, we sold watermelon. Like I remember being 13, tossing watermelons in a field. Like we were like legit doing things. So yeah, we sold watermelons. We had a grocery store. We had what else? We had a barbecue restaurant. We had all kind of crazy things in my town. And we did a lot of traveling. So like during the summers, one summer we mowed lawns. So we had all the equipment and we just drove up and down Georgia and we actually drove up north a bit sometimes. And we just cut yards from Georgia all the way up to like New York and came back home. So yeah, it was a lot of different odd jobs. We got into like real estate, so building homes. So a lot of the work that they did was very labor intensive. That's what I'll say about their work. And then when we all decided to go to college, this was when I was probably in 12th grade. That's when everybody decided like, okay, we're going to make college a thing for our family. And so we all started going to college. And then after that, they started teaching. So my mom did have a little bit of college background before we all decided to go back to school, but she didn't finish. So she finished actually when we all went to college together.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, that is very like true American entrepreneurship. Like, we're just going to make what we need and we're just going to do it any which way we can. That's
Yes.
so cool. So yeah, I mean, like you said, one of the things is when you decided that you were going to get your camera and, you know, you decided continuing off in med school was not going to be what you were going to continue to do. And you were about this camera and you're going to be a photographer. So you said that their reaction was like, this is crazy. And I could imagine being a parent and it's like, you know, we all just invested all this money to go into college, especially as like older adults too. And it's like, well, I'm just going to be a photographer now. And it's like, you know, that's a what, 30, 40, $50,000 education, probably even more because you were in, and that could just be grad school alone. And then you trade it for like a maybe $500, $600 camera. So kind of what was their initial reaction and then how has it changed over time?
The initial reaction from my entire family, because like my nuclear family, that was one thing, but my extended family was just like, what in the world is going on? Because from going from a science nerd, like all through, you know, primary school, middle school, and then college, like, you know, I was so, like, people didn't know that I was creative because I never channeled that side of me because I was so, you know, analytical, practical, you know, and more science driven. So I think a lot of people were just like, oh, it's a hobby. And that's what my parents, they were like, oh, it's a hobby. Like, okay, cool. You know, keep finding a job. Nobody really took me seriously because they were just like, oh yeah, you know, we everybody knows how I am. So they were just thinking like, okay, you know, she's just trying out something new, but they still fully, you know, it was fully understood like, okay, she's going to find a job. So after a while, it started to get serious to them, probably maybe 4 months in when I was actively just not looking for work anymore. They were like, okay, so you're serious about this. And I started growing in new spaces. They saw me show up more on social media because my mom follows me on there a lot, my grandmother. And so after that, then they were like my biggest fans because I think for them, it shifted like, wow, well, it's always been in her blood. So of course she's going to do this, you know. But at first, I think there was just like initial shock and disbelief that, you know, okay, we just did all this. Like we all literally went to college together. You know, we got you into medical school. We got you into grad school. We got you through all this. And then you decided to do photography. Like, what is this? So I think the initial shock, once that wore off, you know, things were pretty like kind of back to normal. And now it was like, oh, well, here's some advice. Here's how you can do this. Here's how you can do that. Then their entrepreneur mind started working to help me build. And so since then, I've just been like on a storm and I have so much support from my entire family. You know, they're always giving me new ideas and new things to do to expand. So it wasn't like something to break up the family or anything catastrophic, but it was definitely a huge shock because I don't think anybody expected me to be a creative. Anybody expected me to be a photographer, to do social media. Like nobody saw that coming.
Right. I mean, and those things just happen too. So, have you always been in photography or once you bought that camera and said, this is what I'm going to be doing to make some money, did you kind of teach yourself? Did you take a class? Like, how did you really learn to become a professional grade photographer?
Yeah. So I had never been interested in photography before. I had a camera, like, you know, everybody wanted to be a natural hair YouTuber. So, you know, I wanted to do like that kind of stuff, but I never really went into photography. And so when I bought my camera, it was actually because, like I said, I had got married. And so it had been a year, well, not probably a year, a few months, maybe 6 months, from our wedding. And I was still on that whole wedding planning high. Like I was a DIY bride. So I planned everything. I had a really nice girl who was my photographer. She did a good job. Like everything was great. And so when I started thinking to myself, like, okay, I need to find something else to do. Like I was toying between ideas that had to do with weddings because that's just the space that I was still in. And so that's when I bought the camera and I was like, well, I can shoot weddings because, you know, I've done one, I've been at one, you know, like even though it was mine. So I felt like I could walk in that space, and I understood brides, and bride-to-bees that were going through it. So I was like, this would be a perfect space for me. So I bought the camera, and literally I learned everything I know from watching YouTube videos. I think there might have been one course that I bought from this guy that I followed on YouTube. I bought his course. But besides that, everything that I know has been trial and error and just like going out and practicing. And with everything that I've done in my business, because like now photography is kind of a side note to the bigger thing that I do. But everything that I've done, I just literally teach myself, and you have to act. You have to do things. You have to try things out to figure out what works. So that's kind of my journey with photography and just my business in general. It's always been about, okay, I've seen it done, or I have an idea of it. If I have questions, I'll ask someone, or I'll, try to look it up, and then I'll just go and do it until I can get it right. And I just keep pushing that way.
Awesome. So yeah, I mean, and I think that goes back to the entrepreneurial grit too, is if you don't know something, you just learn it. Because there is a learning curve to almost everything in being an entrepreneur, which is oftentimes I see that people have this amazing talent, and then, they just need to kind of figure out the business aspect of things. But it seems like you just kind of taught yourself everything. So what were the biggest struggles when it came to being able to teach yourself the actual practical skills you needed to start your business, and then the operational and business side skills that you needed in order to keep your business going?
Ooh, okay. So the biggest obstacle as far as the technical side of things. So, and I'll just talk about my photography business. The hardest part is that I saw like the work of so many other people, and I'm learning these techniques, I'm reading books, I'm watching YouTube videos, but for some reason my photo is not looking like that. But I also didn't have the money to invest in like an in-person course, or a mentor or something. So I think the hardest part was just realizing that my day one wasn't going to look like someone's, year 20 or year 5, whatever. Like, I had to remind myself that I'm still practicing, I'm still growing, I'm still learning. So I started using Facebook groups to network with other photographers, and we started doing headshot swaps. And so basically what that means is that we would get together and we would just photograph each other. And that was a great opportunity for me to learn and ask questions that I needed to ask, because it was in a setting of other photographers that have been there, done that, or we're all learning together. So we might be able to teach each other new things. The other thing that I will say is that that helped me as far as the technical aspect of that was I upgraded. I started upgrading my equipment. The first thing I did was I got a better lens, because I realized that the kit lens that I was using wasn't providing me with the quality that I needed. So sometimes it's just a matter of having the right tools, and we have to recognize if we have the right tools to, do whatever job we're trying to do. And so that was kind of how things went with that. Now, as far as my social media and my social media management, I think my biggest issue over there was just being able to manage people's expectations and help people understand that growing your business online isn't an overnight thing. And so that could be a whole nother conversation. But to answer the other part of your question about the business side, so the business portion for me has come relatively easy. Like I said, I have always been very analytical. I've been very data driven, very stats based. And then I have a family of entrepreneurs who are very familiar with business. So I grew up with a business mindset. My husband is in business. So I'm surrounded by a lot of people that if I don't know something, there's a billion people that I could ask. So that part has come a little bit easy to me. And because I understand the importance of systems and plans, it hasn't been as hard of a transition in that space. I guess the biggest thing that I could say has been an obstacle is scaling, because now I'm getting to a point that I'm growing so fast that I need to figure out how to do it without burning myself out.
Right. So having like you said, being able to tap into resources, especially other people as resources, has been really instrumental in you kind of getting that very first business up and running. And then right right now you said that you're with your other businesses, social media management, that's also starting to scale and grow, and you're going to need to tap into other people who are going to be more probably contractors and employees. And even when one of the other things that you had mentioned too is that, your year one isn't going to look like somebody else's year 20. And so it was definitely a process. Like, you're clearly thriving now, but tell me about that process and kind of what was the number one thing that really helped you transition from kind of being struggling to, okay, we're definitely getting somewhere with this.
Something that I just, from the beginning, I realized I didn't have the money to invest, but I did have my time to invest. And so I literally will eat, sleep, and breathe my business. And I know that's not something feasible for everybody. Some people may have like a 9 to 5, or they may have kids. Like, I don't have kids. I have a husband, but sometimes like I have a lot more time than I know other people may have. But that doesn't mean that if you have other priorities, you can't invest just as much time. Like, there's a golden hour to me from 11 p.m. to about 2 a.m. And that's like a prime time for doing business, just because you can get a lot of things done without everybody being awake. Like, I'm sorry, when my husband's home, he gets on my last nerves. Like, he just gets on my last nerves. I can't get anything done. So it's great, when he goes to bed, I can get a lot of work done. And so from the beginning, that's what I was doing a lot of, like just putting in the hours. Because sometimes for most of us at the beginning, we don't have the money to invest. And I definitely didn't, because I didn't have a real job. Like, I drove Uber, I drove Instacart. Like, it's not beneath me to bag anybody's groceries, and it's not beneath me to give somebody a ride. Like, those things were not beneath me. I did nannying. Like, I did whatever I had to do to kind of supplement my income. But I feel like, in the beginning, and what kind of really gave me some momentum was the fact that I was putting in the hours and I was putting in the work. And so I knew for myself that it was only going to go up from there. Like, things were only going to get better. And so even when I wasn't booking, as many photography clients, I was like, okay, well, I got to hustle. What's not working? And so something else that I did a lot of was just examining what my process was and what my flow was. How was I funneling people through? Doing things like that. And I started to gain a lot of momentum, just from putting myself out there, but most importantly, like doing the actual work. I think so often as entrepreneurs in the beginning, you think that people are just posting pictures and posting selfies and talking and like, that's it. But there's so much more that goes into it. And I recognized that from the jump. And so it took me probably 6 months maybe before I decided, okay, I don't have to, drive Instacart. I don't have to drive Uber. I'm just going to like focus on this full time. And even then it was still kind of shaky because, as entrepreneurs, every dollar is not guaranteed. This week you can make money and the next week, no one books you or whatever. So it can fluctuate. But I was like, if I can just put 100% of my concentration and effort on my business, then things will grow. And it eventually started to do that. But it was very like stressful and very, nerve wracking, and it still is. Like, when you grow, as you start to, expand and get bigger, like it doesn't get any easier. Like, if anybody tries to tell you it gets easier, it doesn't. You unlock a whole new level of problems. But, hopefully you get to a space where you understand what you're doing, who you're doing it for, and why you're doing it. And it makes things, so much easier.
Right. So, and that makes sense to be able to, really invest the time and then do something else where there is a greater demand, where you're able to kind of pour resources into your business. So with that being said too, let's talk about the transition from that first business into the social media management, which you said is really more of your bigger aspect of your business at this time. So at what point did you decide that you were going to expand from just doing photography into doing other things as well?
So prior to me actually having my own businesses, I did a lot of network marketing prior to this. So I had been building my following probably from like, I don't know. It was probably like a year where I was building my following. And so a lot of people were asking like, oh, well, how are you growing your followers? How are you, getting more people? And I finally hit the 10K mark that everybody wants to hit on Instagram. And so, at that point, everybody was just like, what in the world? Like, what is she doing? And so from there, I just started kind of, giving out tips and advice. And then I was on Craigslist because that's one way that I found clients for my photography business. And I was on Craigslist and I saw that someone was looking for a social media manager. Now, I didn't know this was a thing. Like, you would think that I would have known any better, but I had no idea that social media management was like an actual thing. There was a job for that. So I applied for the job on Craigslist, and it was a really great relationship. I really believed in the company and the mission and what they were trying to do. And I just started working with them and helping them. And then from there, I realized how big of a need there was to educate people and to help other businesses with their social media. So it really just kind of fell into my lap. But what happened also is that a lot of my photography has been geared towards either weddings or working with like influencers and bloggers and other entrepreneurs. And so I had a unique opportunity to not only take photos for people, photos for, small business owners or a blog or something, but I also had the opportunity to teach them about growing their own social media. So then I was like, oh, wow, like you guys are actually interested in this stuff. And more people started following me and just wanting to like know more tips about how to grow their business online. And from there, I was just like, okay, maybe this is actually a thing that I can shift into. So, it's kind of all grown together. And that's what I love about my business. The fact that I don't have to put my camera down. Like after I do this interview, I'm going to head over and do some photos for somebody. So, that's the beauty in what I do is that with my agency, I do offer photography. But then also I'm able to do photography on the side, working with other businesses, but then also teaching people overall how to grow their business online. So, it really has all tangled itself together, which has been really great. But yeah, that's kind of just how I transitioned to that space.
Great. So on top of like the done for you services too, I know that you are big on, teaching courses. I know that you have a retreat coming up that you just recently hosted your very first event. So talk about, how all of these things kind of tied together from the photography where you're helping people actually create some of their content to being able to help them manage their content, to also teaching people like this is how you create meaningful content to actually make sales online. And, what about that gives you the most joy?
So what gives me the most joy is, well, there's two things. One, it's actually creating the content. As I've grown as a photographer, it really makes me happy to like take someone's idea and concept and make it something real, like make it real life for them to see. So that's one part that brings me so much joy, that makes me very happy. And the other part that makes me happy is when people start making money, because I love money. I love money so much. But something that I love more than money is like people actually making money, doing something that they love to do. And so that brings me so much joy. And that's why I have moved into this space of being an educator. And it's so crazy because I can see when I think about my life, like as a whole, I can see how different things that I did brought me to this point of being an educator. So like when I was in middle school, I used to want to always lead and teach the class, or in college, I always was like, leading some kind of study group. In med school, I was leading study groups. I went and got my master's and I was teaching there. So like everything that I've done, I've always, when I learn it, I want to teach it to other people. And so it was natural when I went from just doing solely photography to now transitioning into a space of teaching and helping other people grow online. It's just been kind of a natural progression of what I naturally like to do. Like I love to teach people. I love when, it clicks for somebody and they see, success, or they see a result from whatever their efforts are. That makes me really happy. So as far as like what was my progression and everything, or like why I decided to do that, really it was because when I was working with bloggers, like there's one blogger that has been with me since I started doing photography, and, just helping her grow and seeing like the changes with her, and meeting other women who, they desperately want to grow their business online. That is what kind of moved me into a space of, okay, maybe I should host an event, which I did. I hosted my first Mind Your Business event a few weeks ago. And the whole idea of that is to help women focus on the business that pays them. I think a lot of times, like I was saying at the beginning, something that I had a lot of on my side was time. I may not have had the money, but we all have time. And if you can just focus on what's actually paying, things will work out for you. You just have to consistently show up and do it. And so for me, I'm a huge believer in content marketing and content creation. And basically all that is creating content that is getting people interested in you, getting people to know, like, and trust you, and ultimately getting them to buy from you. So that includes photography. That includes the copy that you use. That includes your messaging and your brand voice. Like, a lot of things are included in that. And so it's just made it natural for me to, as a photographer, I can tell you, okay, this looks good or this doesn't look good. This is not aligned with your brand or this is aligned with your brand. And then, like, the science analytical part of me can tell you, okay, this is a great strategy for you to use to grow. And so I've put all that together to teach people and to do courses and programs. And now my retreat, which I'm really excited about. So yeah, I hope that answered the question because I kind of went on a tangent.
No, you answered it perfectly. So yeah, let's kind of talk about a little bit more about you so we can kind of see like your human side a bit. I know you talked about a lot about your upbringing and kind of, moving to a bigger city from a small town, having parents who are entrepreneurs who went to school with you as well. So what was like a really pivotal moment in your life that you credit to turning you into the woman that you are now?
That's a good question. I mean, there are so many moments that I can say like really pushed me to be who I am today. But I think like the biggest moment, which it happened so long ago that I don't even know how relevant it is. But I remember when I was in middle school and my grandmother helped me get into this program. It was a big science program. And I remember having to fundraise to get the money to go. I remember having to, like create like a little plan of who I was going to ask and, how I was going to ask them. And, I made little flyers and everything. And I always think back to this when I think about the things that I do now, because I'm really not doing anything different. The same kind of, I was marketing when I was that age. I was marketing to people and to businesses to get them to buy into me, to get them to, get to know me, to like me, and to trust me enough to say, okay, we're going to invest in you to go to this program, and we're going to give you this money, on good faith that you're going to go and, do what you said you're going to do and everything. And when I think about the things that I'm doing now, I'm just like, wow, I'm still doing the same thing. Like I'm still, writing, messages to people to get like help them get to know me. I'm still, my pictures are my flyers, like I'm still doing all those things. And it's so funny because when I think of moments that were like really life-changing for me, that whole experience of me having to fundraise for something, it was life-changing because that was the first time that I realized that I had the power to put myself out there and that people would believe in me if I showed up for myself.
Wow. And we all kind of have like those experiences like when we're younger and we're volunteering and this, that, the next thing. Because my mom was a nurse for 25 years, right? And
Okay.
I used to go to her job and volunteer, and I would like bring the patients water and, help them like change their bed if they were in the shower or whatever the case was. And they were all neurology patients. So most of them like were having brain surgery and had these huge scars on their head and things like that. And I remember like from an early age, it's like, I'm going to do anything but doing this. Because everyone always thought that I was going to follow in her footsteps. But yeah, and one of the things that you said in that too is bring up the STEM program that you were actually fundraising for. You talked about how everyone always thought that you were going to be some sort of scientist, how you got into medical school, which is obviously very much a STEM field. And then you've talked about like how the analytics of everything, like the analytical work that you have to do with your clients in order to get their content to match what it is that their messaging is, which is what they're trying to connect with their clients for, and then convert that obviously into money. So talk a little bit about how, even though you aren't in what would be considered a technical field and it's more of a creative field at this point, how does that STEM part of what you've always enjoyed play into that? And, how important is analytics for business owners to pay attention to?
Yeah. So I would say that my educational experience, it totally prepared me for what I'm doing today, because I'm so used to poring over thick textbooks and reading. I'm so used to, if I need to figure out the answer to something, I need to run tests to figure out how to do it, or, I need to experiment. And I'm used to doing those kind of things. I'm used to, here's the problem, figure out the answer. And that's all science is. Like, yeah, there's facts. There's a lot of facts in science. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of unanswered questions, and that's all we do is problem solve. And as entrepreneurs, that's our job. Our job is to solve people's problems. Whatever it is that you do, whatever product you sell, whatever service you provide, you are solving somebody's problem. As a photographer, I am solving someone's problem. And so I feel like my college experience, my education experience, and everything that I've done prior to this has really kind of given me like an upper hand and an edge in a sense, because I love stats. So when I went back to get my master's, I got it in bioinformatics, which is basically statistics for biology. And so as a entrepreneur, as a business, especially when you're running things online, and even if you're not running things online, it doesn't matter if it's online or offline. But specifically with what I do in social media management, it's important that I understand analytics, that I understand the numbers, and it really makes a difference. Like, it really makes a difference because you could be investing your time, effort, energy into something that's actually showing you no return on investment. And you need to figure out why, or you need to stop doing it and backtrack to figure out, okay, what should I be doing? And so I would say that your analytics, your business numbers, that is probably the most important part of your business, only because you can run yourself out of business by not knowing those things, by not understanding especially things like return on investment, because so often as entrepreneurs, we spend money, thinking that we're making a good investment, or, thinking that what we're doing is right, when really, you're throwing your money into a hole, like a black hole, and it makes no sense. So yeah, I definitely feel like my background has equipped me for this. And as far as like understanding, I can just talk from the perspective of social media analytics. The one that I think is probably one of the most important as a business owner is website clicks. How many people are going from your social media profile to your website? Between that and your engagement, that's going to be kind of a surefire way to figure out if whatever techniques, whatever things you're doing is actually working.
And that's the stuff that matters with marketing. Like, if you think about like a marketing professional who works for a huge corporate, like an Amazon or something like that, they're figuring out how are you finding them, and then how do they direct you to a product, and then how do they get you to go back to the product. Like, even if you have like, like there was a textbook that I had looked at that I didn't need, like I needed a different version of it, but it was like following me around like every website for like 2 months after the fact. So, even for like retargeting ads and these things where you're, like you said, putting your money back into it, having the analytics and kind of understanding where everything's coming from in the full cycle of people visiting your website, how long they're staying there, what pages are they going to, how quickly are they leaving, do they return, when do they return, all of that makes so much, all of that's so important. So do you have any recommendations for particular tools that people should use in order to boost their engagement, but also be able to monitor some of these more important metrics?
Okay, so really quick on a point that you were just saying, Google is so smart. Google, Facebook, like all these apps, they are so smart. Their whole goal is to get people to stay on their platform and to continue to use their platform. So like you said, when someone goes to a website and they see something, like if you're on Amazon and you put, a camera into your shopping cart, you're going to see ads all over the place on any page you go to about cameras, because Amazon is smart. They want your business, and so does the camera company. So people, like, you have to understand where to put your money, because a lot of people, you get into doing ads and stuff like that, and you're throwing money into a hole because you don't realize how to retarget people. So as far as the insights, because this is like a tool that I use a lot, is Facebook Insights, Instagram Insights, and then Google Analytics. Those are going to be like my top 3 analytics or analytic places that you want to be looking up and looking at. I use the Later app, and it's a scheduling tool for Facebook, Instagram. I think actually all the social media profiles you can use Later for, and they have a really good analytics kind of set up. But you're going to want to be looking at these things continuously, because like you were saying before, understanding like where people are coming from, what are they clicking on? Like, you want to know exactly what somebody is doing when they come into contact with your brand. So if you post a photo on Instagram and, someone clicks on your website, you want to know, like, okay, are people clicking on my website and actually buying whatever it is that I'm, offering to them? As far as like engagement can be tricky sometimes. I use a lot of different engagement calculators. If you just literally Google Instagram engagement calculator, you'll find a dozen of them, and I've probably used all of them. I don't think one is more better than the other. It just sometimes some of them will, take the average of 12 posts versus 9 posts. It really doesn't matter. But I think it's so important to follow your engagement, because your engagement is made up of the people that like, comment, share, bookmark, save, whatever. Like, that's what your engagement is. And you want to have, as good of engagement as you can get. Again, likes and comments, like, they're not going to pay your bills or anything. So I don't, put my whole faith, hope, and trust in that. But it's good to see what kind of content people find interesting, what people are saying to you. Some of the best kind of feedback that you can get comes straight from your customer's mouth, comes straight from the comments that they make, the DMs that they send you. And so I think it's very important as a brand that you're engaging, that you're, showing up and responding to people. Like, that's going to be a way to kind of increase your reach, increase your engagement, because they see that you're engaging with them and that you're actually doing what they're asking you to do. On Instagram, if someone asks me a question, I'll answer it. And then the next day or a couple of days later, I'll do a whole video on it, or I'll do a whole post about it, or something to let people know, hey, I hear you. I see what you want. I'm answering your questions. I'm showing up for you. And like, as entrepreneurs, we have to realize, like I said before, you are in a problem solving business. Like, as a business owner, you are solving problems. And so you have to take the feedback and the questions that are coming from your audience and use that to instill authority with them, to let them know that, like, oh, Kay is a industry leader in this because she's always answering my questions. Like, that's how you want them to feel about you. But just going back to the analytics, I would definitely suggest using Facebook Insights. Facebook has a great ads manager. So if you're running ads, I would totally use that. Then there's Instagram analytics, which Instagram's analytics are actually really good if you actually take the time to read through them. And it's not just their analytics that they have for just your profile, but also the ones that are in your Instagram stories. A lot of people don't look at their Instagram story analytics, but those analytics are really, really helpful as well. And then, of course, Google Analytics. That's going to be phenomenal for your business website, and just seeing where your traffic sources are coming from.
Right. Even going back to like the Instagram stories, I didn't even realize that those were calculated in your Instagram statistics until like 2 weeks ago, because I rarely ever use stories, but I literally maybe 3 weeks ago, I took everything down off of Instagram and just started from scratch, because I had like 6,000 followers. It's like, I don't want to lose the followers, but my feed is looking kind of ugly and it's just time to do something new with this. And so I started using the stories. It's like, oh, like, this is actually included in all this. That's really cool.
Yeah.
And people always say, like, it's so important to use stories because, people won't necessarily always visit your profile, but they might swipe on your story by accident, and then that increases the likelihood that they will go to your profile.
Yeah. And then also with your stories, though, because stories show up at the top of the feed, like, I've gotten to the point now that sometimes I forget to actually scroll through Instagram because I get lost in people's stories. And stories is a great place for you to really engage with your audience. So when a lot of people complain about like not having good engagement and stuff, like, you have to think about the bigger picture and the bigger goal. You could be getting really good engagement in your Instagram stories, and then who cares? Because in your Instagram stories, you can direct people to where you want them to go. Click the link in my bio. Answer this question. So you can create a lot of engagement in your Instagram stories. I'm a huge advocate of stories. I'm always in my stories. And that's a chance for you to talk to your audience without it feeling so formal. Like, a lot of us were on Snapchat. We're familiar with the whole 24-hour idea. So it takes a lot of pressure off of you to know that, like, okay, in 24 hours, I could delete this, or this will be deleted, or I don't like it, I'm not going to post it, or whatever. And it's just, to me, stories is a great way, if you're not yet doing video, to go ahead and practice that. Because honestly, video is going to be the next biggest, or it is the biggest trend that's coming up, is that a lot of people are creating video content. And so if you are a little camera shy, doing Instagram stories, Facebook stories, whatever, all that is going to kind of help transition you into that space so that people can see you. Because at the end of the day, people are doing business with those they know, like, and trust. And when you put your face to your brand, it's going to create a whole new likability factor when you do that.
Right. And I've seen like some people, especially if they're photographers or they're models or whatever the case is, and they're like super anal about their Instagram feed and what it looks like, and everything is matching the same color and this is the next thing. The worst thing that they want to do is go on their feed and like interrupt it with like this weird video. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I'll see a lot of people
Right.
who the only time you'll see any sort of video is in their like story. So yeah, that being said, you know, I want to ask you a question about being a business owner who has these revenue generating streams of income, whether it is the courses and the programs that you teach, whether it is your social media done for you services, whether it's your photography. Now you also have a blog, a podcast, a Facebook group, and all that other stuff. All these things that business owners are always pushed to do for like organic marketing. So tell me a little bit about how you feel as though your followers kind of interact with that content and why is it important to have? Because for a lot of us, you know, blogging is something that people say, I have a blog, but they haven't updated their blog in 2 months. I have a podcast, but they haven't released a new podcast episode in over a month. So talk about, you know, kind of how important it is to do those things. And then with what kind of frequency and consistency should somebody be engaging in that kind of content creation?
Okay. So before I answer about like the frequency and everything, I'm going to touch on where you should show up. You should show up where you feel most comfortable showing up. If you're not a blogger person, if you don't like writing long form content, don't blog. If you know, are very camera shy or you feel like you just don't look good on camera, don't do video. It's not a requirement to do everything and be everywhere. A lot of people will have you think that, but honestly, it does you no good to have a blog if you're only going to post on there every other month. So, you know, instead, show up authentically where you dominate, like where you feel the best at. So for me, I'm really good at podcasts. I'm really good at showing up in my Facebook group. I'm really good at video. And those are the places that I show up. And so I don't put as much pressure on myself to blog. I started a blog because, you know, that's what they said. Everybody needs to blog. Everybody needs to have a website. What you do, you all need a website. But you don't have to necessarily blog if you don't want to. You could just share whatever content you've created in other ways. So like on my blog now, really the only thing that you'll probably see kind of constantly updating is my podcast, and I'll put that on there. But I don't put as much pressure on myself to like, oh, I have to blog, you know, every day or whatever. Like, I don't have time. So, you know, and we have to be mindful of that. We have to be mindful of our time because you can spread yourself thin. Now, if you have a team, do it all. Like the more places you are, the better. And I am a huge believer of being everywhere. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Pinterest, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Like I'm pretty much I'm on Snapchat. Like I'm on every social media channel. And I have a website. I have like 3 websites, you know, so I am all over the place. I'm everywhere because I don't know where someone's going to find me, or I don't know, where someone's going to find me. So, I'm a huge believer in being everywhere, but you know, I'm those places because those places align with me. If they don't, I don't do it. So I'm going to start there just to kind of like take the pressure off of people, is that you don't have to be doing every single thing, especially when you're first getting started. Pick one thing that you know that you're good at, that you can show up consistently doing. And that might be a podcast every week. That's great. That's perfect. It might be a YouTube video or a video on your social media profiles each week or whatever. But, you know, just pick one thing that you know you can consistently show up and do and start there. As far as frequency, I am a huge advocate of the once a week concept. So as long as you're showing up once a week on your blog, so maybe one really good blog post. I'm not talking about like, you know, a 1 paragraph blog post. I mean like a really well thought out blog post. Doing that once a week, that's great because you can share that across all your social media platforms on, other blogs. Like you can contribute that article that you've written for other people. There are a lot of things that you can do with your one really good piece of content. So, if you decide to do a podcast, one podcast a week is perfect. As you start getting into the swing of things, as you start feeling more confident, as you start, wanting to show up more, you can increase that. But at a bare minimum, I would say doing everything once a week is a great place to start. And as you feel more comfortable, you can up it from there. So for me now, I'm in a space of I'm ready to do 2 podcast episodes a week because I really love doing my podcast. And then I have like IGTV videos, and I do those twice a week. And so, I started out with one though, and now I'm increasing things that I really like, and I feel like people are really connecting with me. I'm going to increase those to two. So, that's what I would suggest, because I hate people feeling like they have to do like all the things at the beginning. You don't have to be successful. Like there's no reason to do all that to be successful. And I'm saying that from experience. Like I have not changed. I did go through a period on my blog, full disclaimer, where I blogged every single day, but I only did that for 1 month. And then after that, I was like, I'm over it. Blogging is not for me. So, you trial and error will help you figure out how often you should do it. But I would at least recommend, whatever you decide to do, to start at one time a week. The only thing that's not included in that is like posting on social media. For posting on social media, it has to be a minimum of 5 times a week. So 5 days a week, you should be posting on Instagram, Facebook, whatever profile you're on. You should be posting at least 5 times a week.
Great. That's really good advice. And that's definitely like being a content creator on top of have my business too. That's one of the things that, I've kind of come to terms with, is that, before I'm going to jump into doing something new, I need to really get a handle on the things that I'm already doing and staying consistent with those, and then kind of throwing things out there and see what can I actually manage. Because the one thing you don't want to become is you're running a business, but you're only really known as a content creator. Like content is great, but a lot of the times the content it's going to make you popular. It might not necessarily make you paid though.
Yes.
So definitely balancing, the amount of content that you're creating with how much actual business development and how many clients are you taking and things like that. So kind of as we begin to wrap up, what would be a word of advice for, an entrepreneur who was kind of like yourself, like that, young child who was fundraising for her STEM program, who ended up going to college with her parents, who ended up moving from a small town to one of the biggest cities down south? Like, what kind of advice would you give for somebody coming from where you came from, wanting to do the things that you're doing now?
Oh, that's a good one. I would say to her, girl, just do you. I know that that's like technical advice or whatever, but the truth of the matter is that in your business, no one can do it like you. And by trying to be like other people, or you see somebody else do it, so now you feel like you got to do it, it's not worth it. Like, it's such a waste of time, because a lot of things you're going to find out aren't aligned with how you do business. And people are doing business with you. People are buying your products. People are investing in your services because they like you as a person. And growing up, I just, I had a hard time really believing that people could actually like me for me. And so, I spent a lot of time trying to be like other people, trying to, conform to what everybody else was doing. And as I've gone on this journey of entrepreneurship, I'm at a point now that I'm just like, girl, I'm not going to do anything I don't want to do. If it doesn't feel like Kay, I'm not doing it. And that's perfectly okay. And you're going to attract so many more people that genuinely want to work with you and want to work alongside of you, that want to pay you, whatever. Like, you're going to unlock a whole new realm of people that are just for you when you start doing your own thing. So it's okay to be inspired by people. It's okay to, see ideas and to, have aspirations and hopes and dreams in the future of things that you want. By the end of the day, like, check your heart center and make sure that whatever it is that you're doing, it feels good to you. Like, I'm at a point now that if it don't feel good to me, it's not happening. Like, and I don't feel bad about it anymore. I just don't feel any kind of way. If it's not a heck yes, it's a no. And that's where I'm at in this space. And I think that entrepreneurship brings that out of you. Like, it brings out, the true you, and whoever that is, be her. Like, be all there with that person. Show up completely and, unashamedly that person. And you're going to see so much success and so many results from that. And another thing that I would say is that there's a bigger picture. So whenever you find yourself feeling like this is not working or I want to give up, keep pushing, because you don't know who's watching you and who's waiting for an opening to be better and to go further. There have been so many times where I've wanted to give up. And then someone will send me a DM and they'll be like, I've been watching you for this long, and you really have encouraged me. And this is what's happened because I've listened to you. And it's just like, wow, I was literally about to throw in the towel today. And then I get this message. So I can't stop. Like, I literally cannot stop. So if you ever have those moments where you're just like, I'm over it, don't, like, because it's at that moment, like, somebody is watching you and they need you to keep going because it's going to help them. So, like, what you're doing is bigger than you. And I think we just have to remember that.
Right. And I think that's amazing advice too. And I think it's very true to who you are, because even the little bit of time that I've known you and been following you, you're definitely a very shoot from the hip type person, and your tribe definitely like rocks with you heavy too. So with that being said, how do we become a part of your tribe? How do we follow you? How do we check out the things that you have coming up? Especially, I know your retreat's almost probably sold out. So, what else do you kind of have cooking for the rest of the year?
Oh my gosh, I have so much stuff cooking because I am the most extras person in the world, but hey, it's okay. I just said to do you. So, right now on the books, I am starting to bring back my power hours, which will be a time for, if you're in the Atlanta area or close, you can come and hang out with me. We'll be working together for an hour. It's just going to be something really informal, but just to kind of give people a safe space to ask questions and to actively work on their business. And so I'm going to bring those back, and those will happen like once a month. Then, of course, my retreat. I still have a few spots left for that. And you can get more information for my She's a Creative retreat at she'sacreative.com/retreat. And that's going to be in September 12th through 15th. And it's just going to be a few days of master classes, but really helping people understand work-life balance. And so at this retreat, like, we're going to learn a lot, but we're going to also enjoy ourselves. And like, I'm going to be chilling on the beach. I don't know about anybody else, but I'm going to be at the water. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And then I'm toying around with a few more events, maybe even a conference. I don't know if that'll be this year or next year. So I have a lot of exciting projects that are coming up with that, but you guys can keep up with me on Instagram. That's where I am like 85% of the time. And my Instagram handle is at Mrs. MRS Hillman, HILLMAN. And I'm also on Facebook at K Flukas Hillman. So that's where you can find me.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Of course. I was so happy to do this. Thank you.
No problem. And there you have it. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of the Go Getter Showcase. Please make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. Also, check out the Greater Now membership program for a number of perks, including a bonus semi-exclusive podcast episode, as well as our rewards program where you can earn points for engaging with our content. You can find that at www.mygreaternow.com/membership. Until next time, take care.